Greetings to Africans on the continent and to Africans around the world, around the globe. This is King Aju. The spirit of Pan-African revolution is rising. The dream of the United States of Africa is being worked towards. And we must push for this dream to become a reality, because that is the hope for African people on the continent and around the world. It is a must. But as you know, many of our African leaders are too scared to allow power taken away from them. They are more comfortable in sitting in 10, 20, 30, 40 years in a small state or in a smaller country in Africa as the head of state. But because of this attitude by our leaders, our presidents, all over the 54 states of Africa, nations are being destroyed in Africa by the West and other forces that have interests and agendas in Africa. Point the case, what happened in 2011 when Gaddafi was killed due to the fact that the Western powers attacked Libya. But this article that I'm about to discuss happened just of recently. A statement that was made, or statements that was made in United Kingdom by the president of Uganda. Uganda president reiterates how Africa betrayed Libya, Gaddafi in 2011. Africa did betray Libya and Gaddafi, and in a way, Gaddafi also betrayed Africa, because many, and not even necessarily many, all of the African heads of states, all 54 African presidents, don't want to realize or don't want to accept the fact that we as Africans must create the United States of Africa. That is the only way Africa can survive. That is the only way Africa can protect Africa and the citizens of Africa. There's so many things that are happening in Africa because certain people believe that they have the right to protect their own sovereignty within their country in the continent of Africa, meaning that Africans are fighting among Africans in the name of sovereignty. Meanwhile, other nations watch keenly to strike and get the resources of Africa for their own benefit. Our people are fighting ourselves, fighting each other. But then again, I will say this article came from africannews.com. And the headline of it reads, "The Uganda president reiterates how Africa betrayed Libya Gaddafi in 2011. Africa betrayed Libya and Gaddafi because the heads of states of Africa are only interested in protecting themselves and their country. By protecting themselves, they believe or they think that's all is needed. But that's not true. In order for Africa to be truly liberated and have the structure and power to chart the destiny of the people of Africa, a United States of Africa must be created. It's a must. So certain sovereignties will have to lose certain rights within the United States of Africa, because we have to look at it from the bigger picture. But then again, our leaders love power and wealth over people. That's what they do. Uganda president says Africa should have taken steps to stop North Atlantic Treaty Organization (NATO) military intervention in Libya in 2011. How can Africa do that when Africa and the leaders of Africa are not united? When Africa and the leaders of Africa are not working together with one goal, one purpose, protecting and providing for the people of Africa. That's what leadership does. They protect and provide. But our leaders, from the president of Uganda, who came in power since 1986, and since then he has not stepped down from power. Since then, 1986, how do you create good government? By staying so much in power. You don't create more leaders. You want to be the only head in charge for more than 30 years in a country where the population is over 35 million people. So are you telling me that you're the only one that is fit to rule Uganda for over 30 years? And this is exactly what happens in almost every state or in almost every country in Africa, where leaders go in and they don't want to step down. And by doing that, you have little coups here, little fight here, before you know, there's instability and stuff like that. Why? Because certain people, certain leaders don't want to step down. They want to be the one in control. But if you look at the Western nations, though United Kingdom is trying to separate from European continent by handling their own business, but they're doing so because they have other resources within the Commonwealth that is far better to deal with than to just stick with the European Union. Politics is a game of wit and interest. Yes, it is. But you must protect your asses. The leaders of Africa haven't learned to protect themselves and to protect the continent of Africa. They only think that if they stay more in power, they will be able to protect themselves. But that's not true. Gaddafi was in power for so long, yet he was taken down. When the West see it fit to take down any leader in Africa, they can do so as they see fit. Because Africa is not united, because Africa is not strong militarily, because Africa is not capable to protect herself and the people of Africa. because Africa lacks true leadership. Unity is strength. But in Africa, we have so many people so many leaders who are divided. You have the Francophone division with the Anglophone or English-speaking division, and so forth and so on. You have some Arab nations that look down on Africans and even enslave Africans. Even in today, as we speak, 2020, there are black people in Mauritania who are being enslaved by other Arabs. Yet we have leaders who don't speak up for the people of Africa. Yet you have somebody like the president of Uganda, because he is now in front of BBC News and he wants to be heard, because everything he does and everything that most Africans do is all about recognition of self. So because it's in BBC for the UK African Summit, he had the opportunity to bring this out. Gaddafi has been dead since 2011. Bring this now, will do what? The country known as Libya has been obliterated because of the war. And that's not the only war in Africa. There are many wars in the continent of Africa, but the African Union and the African head of states are incompetent. They don't know what they are doing. They have no idea of what they are doing. They don't understand what leadership means. To them, leadership means staying in power as long as possible. So you probably die. The president of Uganda has been in president since 1986. Since 1986. But if you look at most or even all of the nations in the Western countries or the Western world, they rotate power and they still have a way to maintain power, to regain what they need so that their nation can move forward. But when you look at the leadership of Africa, how do they maintain power? By staying in power for as long as they can, and yet they do nothing for their country and for Africa. And the people of Africa suffer. Look at what is happening in South Africa. Certain black South African claim that foreign nationals have killed 2 black South Africans, and they're angry. Boop, started burning shit down. Stuff like that. See, how often have we been having this type of nonsense happening in South Africa, and yet the leadership of South Africa cannot handle it? How often? Yeah, you want to say diplomatic attempts were not enough. A military intervention should have been pursued. President of Uganda, do you think that Africa has a military to fight against the West? Do you think that? Because that's nonsense. They don't. Or you claim they were not ready. They were not ready because they can never be ready to do that. Nobody makes a nation to be ready for war. Life is war. So you have to be ready to protect your interest. And what is the interest of Africa? Is to protect and provide for the citizens of Africans. But our leaders do not understand that type of leadership. They don't. They have too much ego for unnecessary shit. If you ask the president of Uganda, he's been in presidency for over 30-something years. How many leaders has he trained in case that he's not present today? Those leaders will be able to carry on and protect the interests of Uganda. Has he trained any of the leaders? Is he building future leaders in Uganda that will be able to take over when he's not available? These are things that African leaders must think, but they don't. Because for them, they represent power as long as they can. And anybody that dares to challenge them, it will be taken out or will be dealt with one way or the other. The United Kingdom decided to have a summit with the leaders of Africa. And what happens? The president of Uganda runs like most of the other African presidents, bringing their begging bowls. Leaders find ways to make the funds to be available for the country or the states. You don't go and beg them from other countries. How do you think that the United Kingdom makes its own money or wealth? And why is that Africa cannot apply the same type of ideology and philosophy to gain wealth in Africa? But because our leaders are too selfish and greedy, and they all want to make fast money, accepting aid or even accepting some kind of money from other nations shows that you don't have the ability to create a better state or a better continent in Africa. But these African leaders will never give way. They will fight any and everyone that is trying to build the country and the states or on the continent of Africa. Africa, the people of Africa, the youths of Africa, we must change this revolution that is happening in our continent. We must change this old system of leadership that most of our African leaders have taken. Not all, but most. The type of leadership where they have to sit in power for as long as they can in the name of stability. You're not the only one that can bring stability in the country. You're not the only one that could bring growth in the country. You're not the only one that could do that. And I'm saying this to all heads of states of the African Union. It's time for the youth to challenge the African Union. It's time for the youth to say enough is enough with this nonsense. Many of the youths are pushed outside in the continent of Africa. Pushed outside because they don't see any hope in a continent filled with so much resources. But the president of Uganda will cry and says Africa could have intervened and fought for Libya. But how is that possible? In order to do that, Libya is part of Northern Africa. The Northern African could have, the heads of Northern Africa could have intervened, but they didn't. African Union could have intervened, but they didn't because they were not capable of doing it. They were not capable of handling the situation. They don't have the resources available to do so. The leaders of Africa don't give a damn about Africa. They pretend that they do, but they don't. That is the honest truth. Because if they did, then they would have been doing more, just as other nations are doing. We are part of the human race. The black race is part of the human race. The African race is part of the human race, which means that we have the ability to learn from any other race as much as possible in order to grow and thrive. But we are holding ourselves backward through useless set of leaders in the African Union. The people of Africa, the youths of Africa must rise and be part of the government that must change Africa, or else other nations will come in through all types of deals made in the United Kingdom with these ridiculous heads of states of the African Union, through all types of deals made with with France and African Summit, and the deals made with all types of deal made with the African and China Summit. And when all these deals are made, other nations will come in, get the benefit of the resources that are available in Africa and exploit them and utilize them for their own purposes, while the citizens of Africa are just watching. It's time to wake up, because nothing will be done if we don't do anything about this. Pan-African unity and its Pan-African strength. There's so much happening in the continent of Africa that we, the future leaders of Africa, must change. The type of political gains and political backwardness that our African leaders have utilized must be changed in this near period, or we will die, as the great Marcus Garvey. If we cannot do what others have been doing for themselves, then we will die. The great Marcus Garvey said that. So we must learn to do what other nations are doing for themselves. We Africans must learn to do what is needed to make Africa strong and grow and thrive and benefit the people, so that our people will not be running into the seas to other nations. There are many issues that the African Union needs to solve, but the African Union is weak and incapable of doing so. Which is why The youth must rise. A true Pan-African revolution must take its course all over Africa. If we don't do that, nothing will change. Life is war, said so by Sun Tzu in The Art of War. And the art of war is the art of life, which means that we must fight to create what we want to create or die trying. If we don't do so, then what are we as human beings? Do we not think like any other human beings? Do we not think and act on our thoughts like any other human beings? If we think we are human beings, then we should be able to do what other nations are doing to make sure their own continent and country thrive. If we can't do that, then we will die. This is King H. I'm out. Till next time.